A break from the political to take a moment for unsolved mysteries in the headlines. I'm Jenna, and this is Smarter News. Well, maybe I'm projecting, but I thought when it comes to the news, we could all use a little change of pace. And just a word of warning, in case you have young ears around, some of the topics we're going to tackle today deal with life and death. Not the first one, though. The first one's going to bring us back to a different era, an era of railway thievery. Who knew we are still very much in that era where cops and robbers are confronting each other on the desolate American frontier? We're talking about this because of a sudden revelation in a court filing that nearly $500,000 of Nike shoes were swiped from a train last month. And it turns out this is not an isolated event, but part of a much broader story. In fact, millions of Nikes have been stolen in a slew of train robberies. And this matters not just because of the shoes, but the fact that train robbery has increased, costing some of our nation's largest railroad companies more than $100 million last year alone. By the way, in that particular case, we do have an immigration storyline too that I'd be remiss not to mention, since that's another big news story that we're covering. But 10 of the 11 people charged related to this crime were in the country illegally. One was legally pursuing an asylum claim. So we'll keep you posted on that. But the robberies in general are not isolated to immigration status and generally consist of thieves following slower trains in rural areas that they can board and offload these goods to a car following along. Sometimes the robberies are more advanced than that, including disabling parts of a train to slow it down or stop it. But here's the big picture. Train robberies have increased 40% from last year to more than 65,000 thefts. That's according to one trade group. And since America's railroads are second only to trucks when it comes to moving freights around our country, this is really something to watch. It could impact the companies, but also impact the goods that are getting delivered, which impacts all of our families. So more on that when we get it. Meanwhile, from the rails, we're going to move to the skies. And here's a mystery you will likely remember. Even though it's been 11 years since the news first broke, this story continues to captivate so many. We're talking about Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. That's the plane that disappeared on March 8th, 2014, flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. And no one knows what happened to that plane and the 239 people on board. Theories range all over the place, from terrorism to aliens to a catastrophic event to an accident to an intentional downing of the plane, but no one knows what happened. And as we near 11 years marking that flight, we have news of a new search effort. Although admittedly, the details here are a little bit spotty. The Malaysian government says it will work with Ocean Infinity. That's an ocean exploration company that previously searched for the plane to no avail. And this matters because despite several failed rounds in what's been called the largest aviation search in history, no one has found this plane. However, technology has greatly improved since the last big searches a few years ago. Now, let me just tell you something about Ocean Infinity. This company actually successfully located one of the most famous sunken ships in the world in a very trying environment, Antarctica. The team discovered the Endurance, a lost ship previously under the command of Sir Ernest Shackleton, who sailed out in the early 1900s to explore Antarctica, but his ship got stuck in the ice, and the ice eventually crushed and sank the ship. The 27 men on board and Captain Shackleton miraculously survived and lived to tell the tale, but no one could find the ship. But new technology helped this company locate it just in the last several years. And maybe new technology here will help us find this plane. In our next story, it's the new technology that's raising questions. And we're talking about one of the most horrific murder mysteries in recent times, with potentially a serial killer at the center of this. That's what police allege a man in Long Island is guilty of, and why we refer to this case as a Long Island serial killer, or LISK. New DNA technology has helped investigators build a case against a local man, Rex Heuermann, who's now charged with 7 murders. He denies this, and his attorneys say the new technology is not acceptable in court. And in fact, the DNA technology that police were using here hasn't been used in New York courts yet. But prosecutors say they're confident that the state will adopt the latest and greatest technology available. The defense, though, is fighting this. In fact, the defense attorney, Michael Brown, says this, and this is a quote: "What they call science, we call magic. So you can see there's quite a difference of opinion. There's a pretrial hearing this week that's going to set up in part the arguments for the judge on both sides of this issue, amongst others. And this matters because without this evidence, questions remain about whether prosecutors can successfully try Hewerman. Now, just a little personal reporter's notebook here. When I worked in New York City, I went out to this area where investigators discovered several bodies of young women. These were the victims that were involved in these crimes. And at the time, the cases were cold. The story wasn't getting a lot of attention, but it was a story that always really bothered me because no one was finding answers for these young women. And I must tell you, I still remember walking the area of brush in this windswept section of highway. We were not that far from New York City, but it really felt like a million miles away as we drove around this lonely community at twilight. And I still have a very eerie feeling from that reporting trip. And the reason why I wanted to mention this to you is that it reminds us at the heart of mysteries are usually innocent people, and finding out what happened to them to see that justice is served is really an important part of the story that we never want to forget. So just something to reflect upon. Thank you for your support of quick, concise, nonpartisan, smarter news with a dash of mystery today. I'm Jenna. Have a great day.